Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, or any kind of Linux anything. So it can be a distribution, a desktop environment, application, any kind of news, or oh, I'm hearing it myself in an echo. This is kind of like it's like a Linux Saloon inception here. That's okay. I've done that many times, where it actually goes through OBS. That's no big deal. So anything that's open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. Almost. And with me today, I got a fantastic panel of people. I've got Eris, Redner. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Did I say it correctly? Redner? Okay, yeah. Good. Got Eric, Brian, and Jinda. How is everybody?
Great.
Excellent.
Fine and dandy. How are you?
Ooh. You know, good and bad, but let's just discuss the good things. So if you haven't done the straw poll, be sure to do the straw poll. It's talking about when you think about using the terminal, what comes to mind? Or rather, select what comes to mind when you use the terminal. That's the actual wording of the straw poll. So I thought it was a fun straw poll. Just as an aside, my oldest is saying, "Dad, you need to teach me how to use the terminal." And says, "Well, you're in luck. Here's W3M. You can learn to browse the internet in the terminal." Anyway, so that's what we set that up on an old PC. So we're gonna be tonight's an open mic night. But before we get to that and the straw poll, it's like, what do we do in Linux and tech? I'm just really excited to talk about something. And so I got as of yesterday, I have. Now it's not done yet, but like it's now functional. I can actually utilize it. So little bits of time here and there I do this. But I finally got my new server up and operational, not in its final home yet, but where I can start utilizing it and testing things out. Really excited about this. It's a long in the tooth, I guess you could say, Dell PowerEdge R710. So it uses DDR3 memory, which is cheap to buy, and I have. In RAID 5, I have 32 terabytes of storage. So I should be good for at least 3 years on storing things, is what I'm thinking. Anyway, I'm really excited because initially the server would not take my larger disks. It can only take up to 2 terabytes. And I think, Brian, you told me it's because it's like a 32-bit addressing or something like that. There's some issue with the addressing or something like that. On the
so I think it's the block size times 32 bits. Just that tops out at
2
like
terabytes.
32 bits tops. Well, it's like 4 billion something, but then times whatever the block size is would be the 2 terabytes.
Yeah. So I got a different card for it, and I searched online for there's a resource out there, a really great resource. If I can find it, I'll pass it along. But a really great resource about where you can find to basically keep these old servers running and get the most out of them. Basically, is what it offers. And so, really neat website. And I think I'm going to end up maxing out the RAM in it as well. And I'm going to try and stuff an NVIDIA 2060 that I have lying around in there, and see if I can make it like a piece that sits on my server rack in the basement. But then, like using USB and HDMI over Ethernet, one of those things, and pipe it up to the living room so I can play games on it. There's no real need to do this. It's just something I want to do. I don't know if I'm going to do it yet, but I'm just thinking. And then be able to play games on the TV up there. Not necessary. I mean, it's got to fight for attention with the with the every other gaming system that's up there. And there's already a Steam Deck, so it's not like I really need to do that. But I just think it'd be I don't know, kind of fun to do. But anyway, I'm just really excited. I got it working to the way I want. It's running. I don't know if you've probably guessing it's running OpenSUSE. I don't know if anyone had any doubt, but OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, and it seems to run pretty nicely. So except the video, the video card, the onboard built-in video is terrible. Like it's absolutely just miserable. I don't know what I don't know if Intel just dragged it out of their bottom shelf and just soldered it on the main board, and that's just kind of how they went with it. But anyway, it's pretty terrible. Like it's almost like.
Dude,
what? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is there any way to disable video now I have a brain for it. Thanks, you passed it on to me.
You're welcome.
Hardware uh, rendering or hardware whatever. I think that's rendering is what I'm trying to think of. Is there a way to just disable that? Is there certain things? Because I noticed whenever I tried it, it seemed like most things would start and run and move around the screen well, but there were certain things that were obviously looking for some sort of a rendering something that they would be very choppy or yeah, not a great experience. So
I
I
think
know
it's
what you're
using
talking about.
some sort of software rendering anyway to make it happen.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
uh, just moving windows around is just kind of terrible. It's not. I mean, for doing what I'm doing with it as a server, it doesn't matter. So that's what I
Right,
want to put in
that's
the. I
true.
want to yeah. When I put in the 2060, then I'll be expecting a little more out of that, but not out of the main video. But I do plan on uh, in order actually to install a video card, I'm gonna have to pull out the wiring harness in there that connects like the
Okay.
main board to the front back plane where it powers the
Okay.
drives and everything. And I'm gonna have
Hmm.
to solder in the connection so I can power the drive. So I have to make some modifications. So if I'm crying next week, you'll know why. I blew something up.
Oh, it'll be fine, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what Doc Brown said, right? You hit 88. When that alarm goes
We're
off,
going to
you
see
hit the
some
accelerator.
serious
Yep, that too.
when this baby hits 88.
So anyway, it's just kind of fun to play with enterprise hardware. I find if you can get a hold of some old enterprise hardware, it's just there's something. It's a different world for sure, and I think
It's amazing
educational.
what it's amazing what companies will pay for this stuff, and
Hmm.
then it has a usable life. And a lot of times, as soon as the warranty would go, like my company would just decommission it, and then
Yep.
rather than try to reuse it for something else, like a hardware lab or something like that, they would just literally throw it away. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You're not gonna just throw it away. That
So
has plenty of, and I mean, some of those, I think I had a Dell tower, like a full tower server. It was, 2.5, 3 feet tall. Probably
that's
weighed
fun.
60 pounds.
Yeah, maybe more than that.
But you could also put probably 12 drives in it.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, that thing ran, it had some kind of Xenon processor in it. I mean, I don't know. I probably had it for another 6, 7 years, but it ended up being, it had two power supplies. It was like, fault tolerant, so it had sort of duplication and stuff.
Okay.
And it just ended up eating. Like you could just like tell how much electricity it was just, because it's a server. Like most companies don't care. It's in a server room, and they're not too worried about the power bill. Versus me, it's in like my office and under the desk, and it's like a space heater.
Oh, right,
Right.
your office is like 30 degrees warmer.
Yeah, yeah. My wife was finally like, "Why is it so hot in here?" I'm like, yeah, about that." So,
If if you had lizards or something, it'd be a trade-off, I guess.
they've also had those very clicky drives in it. The not SATA. What were the SCSI drives? It had a bunch of SCSI
Mm.
drives, so it was like they're so loud. So, yeah. But anyway, it is a shame that they pay so much for the hardware and then a lot of times don't really put any effort into, doing something about it whenever it's finally decommissioned. So,
Right.
but
Yeah, it's good times. Now I do notice that this one seems to throttle itself way down, like when it's not being utilized. So the fans pretty much they don't turn off, but it's rather quiet for a
gotcha.
server when it's not being utilized. So if I'm not like giving her the onions, that seems to do just fine. So I don't know like
Is it
when
a
it
rack
comes.
mount?
Yeah, it's a rack mount. It's a big. I don't know what do you call that form factor? Giant.
U. It's like
It's like a
one
it's
U,
like a
two
two
U, three U.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
two
it's
U
like
I
a two
think.
U rack mount. Yeah.
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 I like the faceplate on it too. It's kind of BA looking. It's kind of like almost like a cage, like a very aggressive, very mean looking thing on the
Neat.
front of it that you just snap on. I like it. And then, as Brian can attest to, where I work, they don't throw things away very quickly. They want to run things into the ground if at all possible. So,
That's
we're
good.
yeah,
I can get behind that.
we're we're well past the service life on a lot of things, but you just keep giving a mouth to mouth
If you
and
have
drive now and
the
again.
expertise, I think that's really what it comes down to is a lot of times they just don't have expertise in house to be able to deal with that kind of stuff. So once it's out of warranty, they're just like, it's not worth the
Yeah.
liability. But if you have the people that understand how it works and are there to fix it, to swap drives or power supplies, that was always the thing that seemed to go because they get so hot. Those power supplies just tend to burn out after, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years. And so that was something that I felt like more than anything else, I probably replaced power supplies.
I can see that. I haven't had one go yet, but I
They've
don't know. I
gotten so
guess
much better recently. I mean, no, I say recently, I mean like 15 years, but in my mind,
that's
recently,
recent. That's still
uh,
recent. Because when I think about it,
you
like
know,
2005 is not 20 years ago.
not in my mind, but
No, it's not.
no, I mean, I feel like all my home built systems, that was kind of the same thing where, I'd have weird issues with like power supplies, connectors. Like there were just, you know, things that would reliably go bad after a certain amount of time. And it seems like now, I don't know, like I seem to get like indefinite life out of some of these components and like well beyond. And maybe it's just because I'm not banging them around. They're just sort of, they are where they are and I don't really do much with them. But yeah, things have just seemed to have gotten, and I think this probably speaks a lot to the quality control process. They've automated so
Oh,
much
sure.
of that, and they've,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah. Yeah, you say that though. About 20 years ago, I remember I used to keep a stash of power supplies because I never
mhm.
knew. I never knew when they would
Well,
go out.
especially if it was one of those weird, like I had a lot of Dell towers, and they had these like very specific. It wasn't that the power supply technology was any different; it just was the form factor of it was something weird. And
Right.
once they stopped making them, that was it. Like you could never get them again. So I'd have like a spare, just in case.
Well, thankfully, you can get most of that stuff on Amazon now, and they I don't know how good they are, but it is
You
available.
can. I mean, I was looking for a battery for that Latitude I have, where it's probably like 60% still, 60% battery life. And I'm like, yeah, this thing would be better if I, would have 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6 hours. So there's like three levels of battery. You can get the Dell one, which is more than what I paid for the thing in the first place. The Dell battery is like $150 and I paid 140 for the whole unit. Then there's the Amazon pricing, which is like 50, $60. And maybe you get as good a battery, maybe not. I think it's kind of a crapshoot. And then you can do the eBay route where it's like 20. And you just know that there's no way that's a real deal battery. Like it's probably going to be, half the cells it's supposed to or whatever. So
I
it'll say 100% battery health, but you know, the storage capacity will be like a D cell.
I I did just buy recently a new battery for my Dell D630. I don't know if you remember the D630. Great machine
Hmm.
from 2007. Not so great today, but I still like it. Anyway, I decided to like with plasma. This is a total side rant, but could talk about batteries. With plasma 6.1 or whatever when it came out 6.1.2,
Hmm.
they did the triple buffering thing. Well, my Latitude, yeah, the Latitude has the NVIDIA NVS graphics in there, and so it's been like really
Hmm.
ropey ever since NVIDIA stopped, you know,
Mm.
whatever, and so it's just the Nuvo drivers is all that you can get for it, and so
Gotcha.
not so much an SDDM, but when you get into the actual like plasma, it's
Hmm.
not too bad. It actually
Wow.
makes the machine quite usable. So,
Is it a 64-bit system?
yep, it's a dual core 64 bit.
Okay. Okay. Hey Nate, guess who snuck in while we were
I
talking?
saw Adam did. He like
He
he
did.
went through
He
those
snuck in.
saloon doors and just kind of like you could hear him
He
creaking, and
did.
then walked
Just a
in.
little creak, yeah.
Yeah, but he can hear his spurs. Ksh, ksh. Goes, he pulls up, slams
Whiskey.
his hand on the table and says, "Lou, give me a milk chocolate."
Yeah. He's
Neat.
not. He's not
Howdy.
going for it. Oh, there it is. Wait a minute.
There's
No,
Adam.
I'm just in here waiting. I just wanted to see how far I would go.
Yeah.
Dance, little
Well,
monkey, dance.
let's try to do a little Back to the Future quoting there.
Yeah.
It was good. It was good.
So welcome, Adam.
Hey, hey.
Are you excited about the new
Yeah, that's
Linux
about
Mint?
it, yeah. Yeah, man. I don't think I've ever. No, I'm sorry, I can't.
I see the excitement
not.
in the chat, and so anyway.
Just just imagine that my face and my icon there is how I'm feeling.
Okay, I'll go with that. I know I like to try it out from time to time. You know, see how it goes.
I did have a
All
thought
right.
today though.
Yeah, I don't really have as much use for it, I guess.
Yeah. Well.
It's one of the few distros, and I think I'd throw pop into this mix as well, where I don't have to mess around with like theming, like trying to get all the applications to look similar. Like it just all seems to work.
Hmm.
Like, I
It's
install
a
a random
product,
Flatpak or yeah, exactly. It's like refined,
right?
So yes, there might be a lot you don't necessarily find interesting or but in terms of just like giving it well, just using it yourself and not having to mess with all that stuff because that's still so annoying to me. And I know this is like a dumb thing, but you install and maybe it's because I'm using GNOME, but you start using GNOME and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just everything's nice and you know cohesive, and then all of a sudden you install something and like I installed a custom cursor and no, sorry, that's too much to ask.
Right.
We're gonna have to break everything now, and then you're gonna spend the next 6 hours trying to like fix it. So
Yep.
Yeah, I think the type of packages that I need tend to be newer than what Mint offers.
yeah,
That's large. Like as far as functionality goes and like everything else, like it's a fine distro. It just doesn't fit my needs. That's all.
yeah.
I have nothing against it. It's not Manjaro. It's not awful.
Well, 21.3 was like the last release before the refresh. So 22 is going to be Ubuntu 22.04. So it'll be a newer kernel, newer hardware stack, stuff like that. So I know a lot of people that like Mint have been like, please, let's hurry up because, if you have any kind of, apparently all of the, there's a lot of audio gear and stuff that needs the newer kernels. And yeah, it could be a problem. But it won't be a problem for the next year or two or year and a half or so until they get to, I think they said 2026 for the 24 release.
Hmm.
So they'll be on Ubuntu 22.04 for the next 2 years.
So Ron Singh says Mint is like a 20-year-old port, smooth. I kind of like that. It's just smooth.
You cut off. Was it 20-year-old what?
22-year-old port.
Port.
Like
oh, like
yeah.
a okay, like
yeah,
a
yeah, like a
beverage.
wine,
Okay.
yeah, beverage, yeah. Smooth.
Gotcha.
Like left.
Yeah, not starboard. So, yeah, I think Linux Mint Linux Mint is a really good product. I think it's a very nicely done product. I just happen to like projects better. So it's more.
Yeah, it's actually a really good way to put it. I never thought of it that way, but they've definitely productized it to the point where they spend a lot of effort on QA and making it easy for just random people to sit down and use.
If it was a product that would have came in a really nice box.
It probably 20 years ago it probably would have. I have
Yeah,
many
it would have
boxes of
been a
Mandrake
really
Linux.
nice
Yeah.
box.
I remember buying SUSE for that reason because I went into
The manual.
maybe Best Buy somewhere and it was just on a shelf and I thought that's really neat. It's I want the whole box and everything. So yeah.
They've made a solid distro and solid product at that, right? But it always struck me as funny that this distro is massive compared to many other non-Ubuntu, not specifically Ubuntu, right?
Mhm.
Like it's a pretty big project, and it was just mainly out of spite. Like it was just made out of spite, and
Yeah,
I'm just like,
because
okay,
I think it was because they weren't including the patent encumbered decoders and
right.
wasn't that
and then
it?
they made Cinnamon because they didn't like Unity and all that. Like,
Yeah, I think it was
the
like
whole
Unity.
the whole package is just like, yeah, that's
It's
the
re, it's
entire
re,
mantra
it's
is just a
reactive,
middle
right? Yeah,
finger,
reactionary. Yeah.
But it's like
Well,
they
yeah, I mean-
pivoted from being like an FU to Ubuntu to actually making a decent product, and like that's pretty tough.
It
I'm-
can be really hard to stick with it that long.
Right.
It is, but I'm
They
also
did enough right to make it a viable thing, right?
and I think they have people that are willing to actually pay because it always surprises me that each newsletter, they do a monthly newsletter, that they're pulling in, 40 to $60,000 a month in donations, which is just like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously from a corporation standpoint, that's not very much, but like for a small group of developers, that's reasonable. I mean,
For a side hustle, yeah.
Mhm.
should I let Ben in?
I know I wouldn't.
I guess.
Look, it's Ben.
You done goofed.
Yo.
Consequences will never be the same.
No, yeah, I know. It's all downhill from here.
Oh no, it's bad.
Well, good deal.
Where'd he go?
I like
That's
that.
good.
I like that initial rambling around of things. So if you have not done that straw poll yet, please do so. I would.
I have to say, I appreciate that you made it multiple choice. I was able to pick my answer and pick Tux Penguin.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, see?
I was so happy with that.
A little bit of show feedback for you. My dad actually watches Saloon every so often.
Oh, really?
He's retired and has nothing else to do, I guess. But no, I'm just kidding. But no, he actually did. He did want me to give you the bit of feedback that he felt like in some episodes we spend too much time on the straw poll.
Oh,
He's like,
okay.
Yeah, it can happen.
I just thought it was an interesting bit of feedback.
Yeah, feedback's feedback. That's good stuff.
We have, yes. There have been times we pretty much beat that straw poll into a pulp, and so your dad's right. But
yeah.
But I would go ahead and
It's
I would
not
take
every
that.
time. But.
I would take that a step further and say we probably beat a lot of things to death, not just a straw poll. He just happened to catch a straw poll, and if you were to watch other Linux saloons, you'd probably say we probably beat something else to death
Yeah.
too. So that's probably like what we do. We whip the horse until the horse can't be whipped anymore here. What? I'm not condoning animal abuse.
Horse, children, it's all the same.
Yeah.
No.
Except children like grow up and resent you. The horse won't.
I don't know. I don't
Anyway.
generally rely on children for transportation, so.
I mean, I don't rely on horses either. Unless you call that steel horse I ride. Right? Huh?
Is that a Bon Jovi reference?
Yeah, but was he talking about a Mustang or a motorcycle? I can't ever remember. I'm a cowboy on that steel horse
Dodge
I ride.
Colt.
Could have been, yeah.
Or you wanted?
2021 Chrysler
or
Pacifica, like I ride around in.
Man, I think people sleep on the minivan these days, man. Like minivan is where it's at. It always has been, but
Listen,
people
the
got
problem.
it twisted that it's supposed to be some like family vehicle. No, man.
I've always kind of
Minivans
thought that
are make-
minivans are awesome.
Yeah,
You're just like, I can put so much stuff in here. It's just this giant box that like I take places.
I can put stuff and
It's-
children.
Yeah. It's like, oh, holy crap! There's 8 people in the group today. Well, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I remember being a kid and having a family friend that had one of those vans that was like done up. It had shag carpet. It
Ooh,
had a
yeah.
working
Yeah.
sink.
My dad
Oh,
had,
wow.
had an Astro van, conversion van,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was sweet. It had
It had
captain's
like an
chairs in the
airbrushed-
back and everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it had like an airbrushed mural on the side. Yeah, good stuff.
We had that
That is
like
pretty
track
cool.
lighting like you see in a movie theater, like on the floor. We had like
Oh,
track
wow.
lighting on the floor and stuff. Yeah.
It's like an airplane, when the
Nice.
emergency lights come on.
Yeah, right.
Right, and that's what people don't realize. That's what you could have if you just
true.
live the minivan life.
So my minivan's a plug-in hybrid, and so it's pretty cool because if I'm not driving to work, I don't actually use any gas when I drive around. That's pretty cool.
He says a plug-in.
What
hybrid?
is?
Mm-hmm.
How many miles do you get normally
On
before
electric,
it goes?
yeah, about 30, and I can go on the highway with it too, as long as I don't try and get on it. So
That's not bad. Yeah, I was looking at an Audi e-tron, but it only got People were saying you got like maybe 20, which again, if you're in town,
That's
the
fine.
problem is you have to run the air conditioning here and you have to run it like full blast, especially when you first get in. So, I mean, unless you're smart enough to not have your garage full of stuff and you can actually park in it. Uh, I've heard people put cars in their garages. It's like a rumor that I've heard.
I don't think they do
No,
that in
it's usually
America.
just stuff. They're just lying to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, only in America do you put useless junk in a garage and a
Brand
30,
new
40,
tens of
$50,000
thousand vehicles.
yeah. in the weather.
Exactly. Yeah, that
so true.
chair and those cardboard boxes. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get those messed up.
Yeah.
Dude, you guys. So I'm staying in this house for work, and it has a garage, and it's like the first time in my whole life I've been able to park a car in the garage.
Ooh.
I park in the garage every single day,
What's that like?
and it's amazing. It's like this room. It's just another room that I can go to, and my car's in it.
I feel like I'm being gaslit by this guy.
No, man. In
Yeah.
the wintertime, I'd leave in the morning and just like start my car and drive out. And then there's other cars up and down the road with frost on the windshields and people out there scraping off frost. And it's like, oh, yeah, I don't have a bunch of crap in the garage because I don't have a bunch of stuff here. So I could just, yeah, it's amazing.
Now that
Yeah, it
doesn't
would be
mean you
magical.
can't leave a bunch of crap in the garage when you
Oh,
leave.
I definitely could, but I figure this isn't permanent. So I'm gonna enjoy the garage while I can.
Yeah, so when I go places where it's an indoor parking garage or something and get into the car, and really it's all about the heat right down here in the summer. So if I can get into a car and it's not smoldering hot, like that's because then the air conditioner is like cold right away, which is amazing as well, instead of like 10 minutes later.
Right.
So yeah, one of these days. That's actually I have made a bit of a stink of it with my wife and just sort of said, look, I would really like to park. I just got a different car, and it's like every car I've had down here after a few years, like any plastic, the clear coat on it, I don't know what's different about plastics. Maybe it just doesn't dissipate heat better as well as metal does. But so any of the bumpers, window, mirrors, stuff like that, if you're not really careful, the sun damages them and then it starts to peel. And so the last like 3 cars have done that after several years. So I said, look, like you said, I mean, I just paid all this money. I would really like to keep it in the garage, like if possible. So we've actually gone out and had a couple afternoons of cleaning, and I went out. I hope my wife never sees this, but I went out and we're cleaning, and like all this stuff in the middle.
She probably won't watch it. I wouldn't worry.
No, she won't. She won't. But it's all stuff that is, I have no idea what it is. Honestly, it's like furniture and boxes and stuff. Like I literally have no idea. So we go out and I'm just standing there and she's like, "Are you going to help me?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me what to do." And she's like, "Well, I want you to straighten this stuff out." I'm like, "I don't know what any of it is." And she just gave me this look. I'm like, "What?" Point to anything in there that's mine. One thing. And she's just like, "Fine, clean up the tools." And I'm like, "Okay." So, which are already clean anyway. I mean, it's not like, I tend to put stuff back where it goes instead of just wherever it ended up.
Right.
But yeah, anyway.
That's pretty funny.
So hopefully by the end of the year, I will have a place to put my car.
Yeah, I don't have an attached garage, so if I want to park it inside, I have to park it into what is Cubicle Labs essentially, and I got tons of space in there, so I have multiple cars in there right now. But
the other option,
one's a toy. Anyway, so that's where I put it. But I just installed a plug so I can charge my car back there now too, so that's nice. Is
it just 120 or is it
220
or 110 or 220? Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad. Your service was already upgraded.
Oh yeah. That's not a problem.
Okay. Now the other option would be some sort of a, not carport necessarily, but I have a neighbor that has, I guess it's just maybe sailcloth or just some kind of a cloth covering.
Mm-hmm.
It just has these big sort of metal poles out towards the end of the driveway, and
I've seen that
even
in Florida,
just to keep the sun off.
I've seen that in Florida quite a bit. Yeah, different, like over pools and like in parking lots and things like that.
Yeah, so that may be an option as well. We'll see. Anyway, that riveting conversation. I know.
I love it. we should probably get to that straw poll. Let's go ahead and beat that straw poll to death, Eris. So yeah, we kind of almost got to it. Almost had it. Almost had it. Now then we veered off.
So are we ready for the poll?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you should just interrupt. I think that'd probably be best in the future.
Yeah, I'll refresh one last time. So the question is, select all that come to mind when you think about using the terminal. The number one response was love the terminal with 32%, followed by pleasant, 20%, 14% exciting, Tux Penguin, 13%, indifferent, 6%, 6% other, 5% very complicated, 3% scary, and 2% boring.
Ouch.
And as far as responses, let me see. I did get some. First response was, I can do a few things in the terminal, or if someone gives me a command, I can do it, but that's it. Too complicated. And then somebody else said, it's a tool, a very useful tool, but still a tool. But it also depends heavily on the shell. While I'm familiar with popular shells like Bash or CSH on the Linux side, I'm still thrown off by something like PowerShell on Windows. And then somebody else said, agree with being a tool. While everything can be done in the terminal, some things are easier, faster in the GUI. Others in the terminal, learn to use the best tool for the job. Feelings are overrated. And then somebody said, two thoughts about the terminal, possibly contradictory. I think the Linux community needs to find a way to make the terminal not scary for newcomers. And that was one. And then number two is, I think the Linux community or elements thereof needs to quit making such a big deal out of the terminal. And then they said, also, we need to do a much better job countering the propaganda and misinformation out there about how if you use Linux, you have to use the terminal, and Linux is therefore this big, scary, and hard to learn, hard to use environment. Also, we need to do a better job countering the propaganda. I don't know. They said that, so it's not big, scary, hard to learn, or hard to use environment. And then somebody else said, other, I respect the terminal. It's sometimes the best way to do a thing. I often use the Windows terminal to do things when I use that OS. I also muck around in the registry and had great success in unscrewing my compatriots' errors in judgment. I like the simplicity of what a terminal can do. But if you're appealing to people who get scared by no splash, it's not the way to make them comfortable. It seems to me like you want them to put on a blindfold and try to operate a table saw. Too many seemingly harmless strings can actually bork their systems. It's incantations and hand waving nonsense to the novice. In the GUI world, GUI explanations are best. And the final one is, on Linux there is not so many better options to use the terminal to install software. Sure, Discover GNOME software works, but from my experience, both are very slow and clunky to work with. It also has to do with the fact that Windows and Mac users are used to just downloading some executable file from the internet and double-clicking instead of using repositories. Double-clicking an exe file or on Mac with those silly DMG files is so dumb. But that's how people are used to installing software.
Yeah, I think those are all
Wow.
good points.
Yeah, but you have to admit, in terms of like interaction, I think you got more feedback on the terminal than possibly anything else. In terms of asking people their thoughts.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we got a lot. This is not the highest participation one, but yeah, there were a lot of.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
No. I think we got like half more participation added to this total would be the highest one. I'm not sure
Gotcha.
which poll it was though, but I'm pretty sure we got half more participants in that one.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think I think I like the terminal because it's just because it's a nerdy thing. That's primarily why I like it because it's neat. It's neat to do things in the terminal. It's also really quick for me, because I'm comfortable enough doing certain tasks in the terminal. It's just quicker. But
Hmm.
like Adam says, about a lot of things in the tech world, just because it's neat, it's rad. Makes you feel like like you're some kind of hacker. I guess that's actually what really got me roped into it in the first place. Is I want to be more like a hacker type and be able to do these things in the terminal. When I saw somebody at my first real corporate job, I saw the IT technician there just do some really cool stuff in Unix, and I just thought it was so cool. I wanted to learn how to do that, and that was really the impetus behind learning to use terminal. Yeah.
I think it's the right tool for the job for certain things. So, um, I think it would be difficult to try to administer. I mean, obviously, a server doesn't have a GUI. I mean, you could argue that there are things like what is a Copilot, that you can use to graphically administer servers and things like that. So it's not like there aren't tools, but in terms of just, I've always thought it having a server like a Windows server where you've got the entire like Windows graphical user interface is kind of overkill. I mean, obviously that's the Windows way, so you just kind of get used to it. But I can tell you that trying to administer something on Windows through a UI can be really painful because it's annoying to have to like select things or just to interact with it is much slower than and much less precise than just going to a command line and saying do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's an sysadmin sort of approach to it, whereas I get that from an end user perspective. And I think that is true that, the one guy saying that, I forget the word that they use, but basically the idea that, you have to use the terminal. And we kind of go back to the Mint conversation where that's one of the things they do really well is that by and large, if you're running a installation of Windows Mint, pretty much everything is just straight in the through the UI. And that's actually what I like about Cinnamon is it's kind of like the midway point for me between something like GNOME where you have to install tweaks to do things like even change your font, which is stupid. Like you can't do it in the normal control panel because, who would ever want to change their font, right?
Right.
Versus something like KDE Plasma, where, Plasma's got a tech, a tick box for like every single thing you could imagine. And it's can be just sort of too much, and that's why I like Cinnamon because it's sort of in the middle. Like all of the things have been considered and like what would normal people need. And so,
More normal.
yeah,
I
you
don't, I
wouldn't
don't know if
have to,
normal is
Yeah.
the
well,
right
yeah.
descriptor. More normal.
So
But
I
just the idea that you don't need a terminal for most people for most things in Linux today, which is
Mm-hmm.
is true.
Yep. So I completely agree with what you're saying. Where it really depends on what your use case is, and I think that Linux really is, came from Unix, and it really was more of a server thing, where system administrators would be much more likely to use those systems than end users. Um, and the whole desktop Linux thing is almost more of an add-on to the systems that were already existing. So it makes sense
Good
that
point.
things can be seen as so terminal heavy because the people who were originally using the systems, I mean, that was the tool. I mean, that's how you would do it. Um, but something like Linux Mint for end users using a desktop, that's you don't need it at all in that case.
Pretty
Well,
much, yeah.
think about this historically. Like DOS was an end user environment, and it was just all terminal, right? It was all command
Mm-hmm.
line. So
Yeah.
the end user using a command line or a terminal is not a foreign idea. Just that today, many of those things that you would have done with various commands and stuff in DOS are now being taken over by GUI apps, which is totally fine. And to
Yeah.
what Eric was talking about, doing things on Windows servers through the GUI and all of that, it's like, well, the there are a lot of people who are pretty darn quick with the UI, but at the same time, you're right. Like, I think it's I don't think the terminal is necessarily better or worse than either of them, and it's not really necessarily the right tool for the job, so to speak, in my opinion, because I feel like they often just do the same things just in different ways. And for me, it's about efficiency of the interface. So, like for example, Office switched to the ribbon interface back in 2007,
Hmm.
and they did that because there was so much functionality in the old versions of Office that look, like LibreOffice does today, that people weren't aware of because it wasn't surfaced easily. And that's
Yeah.
that's where a GUI app really shines, is sort of showing the user not just what they can do, but also what they can't do implicitly by showing them what they can do. And with a terminal, the scary thing for most people with the terminal is they sit at it and it's like, what can I do and what can't I do? Because if they go and type things that they think they can do, like they're playing Zork or something, then and they get like a weird response or something like that, then they might be like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. No one's telling me what I can and can't say to this thing. And
Right.
most of the time when I say something to it, it doesn't get what I'm trying to say. And whereas the GUI is sort of like, instead of having to know a language, the GUI is like a little travel brochure that has like common phrases that you can say, and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So I think the reason a lot of people are turned off by the terminal is not that the terminal is difficult to learn or that anything like that. It's just that you don't know what you can and can't do with it, right, when you look at it. And the same thing goes with even complex tools like Photoshop or Premiere or even Windows Server and stuff. A lot of that, what's available is surfaced. You open up any kind of user in Active Directory users and computers, and you immediately see all the fields that a user could possibly have. But unless you already knew that, the terminal is not going to tell you that. PowerShell is not going to tell you everything unless you
Yeah.
know how to get PowerShell to tell you that thing. Whereas
I
the
mean,
GUI just shows you.
it
Yeah.
you can be snowblind though. There are definitely times where it's difficult to see the forest through the trees because I mean, you can overload a UI pretty easily if you don't think it out, and have
Correct.
some cohesive sort of design principles and discoverability and stuff like that. I completely agree with you about everything you just said in terms of like, otherwise you have no idea what I can and can't do. But that is pretty heavily dependent on on a good UI. But
Right. Like I
yeah,
would
I
not want a UI for OpenSSL. That would be horrendous. Right. But like,
right.
yeah. So at that point, you have to ask, is my tool should my tool just hang out in the background because it has too many too many bits, Because the key to good, having a good UI is, like you said, servicing not just what you can and can't do, but what the user should and shouldn't do, maybe. If that
Yeah.
it sounds a little nanny state saying that way, but sort of the
Yeah.
like, what's the point of the tool, right? Doesn't matter if the thing in the background has a bazillion switches and stuff. It's about
What's
surfacing
funny?
the thing that matters.
When I was younger and was sort of, I would say more or less sort of on an upward trajectory with IT in general, I would actually resent gatekeeping, and it was something that I found to be like annoying at best, and actually, um, a statement on like, I don't need anyone telling me what I can and can't do. Like, I'll figure it out. As I've sort of gotten away from IT as a profession and doing it day to day, I actually appreciate more gatekeeping and guardrails because I think when someone does it well and they've really considered what normal people, or again, I'm using that term, but like what most normal users or just non-technical or whatever, just end users, what they need, if they do that in an effective way, I find that to be really helpful. Not only, and I think that's across the board, from the most complicated software to the simplest. Like, put in front of me what I need to use on a regular basis, and then give me the opportunity to make changes if something's annoying me and I want to be able to change it. But otherwise, I don't need to see any of that. And I think that's still why I like, better than most of the other, even though it is a little annoying to have tweaks and different things, um, at the end of the day, I think because it is just so clean and focused, I guess, that appeals to me. And that I think that for me has been about sort of not needing to be as much of a power user as I used to be. So
hmm The other neat thing too is in the Windows GUI for managing stuff. I was just thinking about this, and which is why I kind of sort of left. But the further you dig into a setting in Windows, the further back in the Windows archaeology of UIs you get to experience. So if you go deep enough, you get to experience Windows 95, 98, or maybe it's actually more like Windows 2000, really. But
Yeah, you can still get to the phone dialer. from
yeah,
Windows 11.
yeah,
Saying.
just got if you
Nice.
dig hard enough, you can find it.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's
But
fun.
I guess the key takeaway is that it's a matter of good design for the tool you're using, and
Mhm.
sometimes the terminal is the right way to, not necessarily the terminal itself as a tool, but the terminal is the right way to interface with your tool versus a UI. And it's when you try to duplicate both is when it all falls apart.
So going back to the number one poll, I'm not sure how much participation we got when we used to have a Discord poll and a Telegram poll and like a Matrix poll. But as far as the straw poll, the number one poll was, or I think is, what is the primary reason you use Linux? That had the most participation ever, I think.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
That was a fun one too. Yeah, it's good times.
Seemed like there was a lot of discussion on this one over the last week.
Yeah, the go ahead.
I was just going to say we continually have this discussion of like the year of the Linux desktop and bringing more people over to Linux, which I don't know if that's really it. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but also I don't know that it's actually a great idea. I think the people that use Linux use it because they find value in doing so, whereas most people who don't care one way or another, yes, they might have a better experience, but if they
I
can't
kind
walk
of
in,
feel like the people that use Linux self-selected themselves to use Linux.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
probably better that way. And I agree. I don't understand why so many people are kind of obsessed with how to get more people over. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
no, I gave up on that a long time ago, and I actually asked myself, like, what am I gaining here? Like, if people don't want to do it, then they don't want to do it, and who cares? Let them use Windows. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If they come
It's
to
a-
me and ask me to help them with Windows, I'll say, look, I don't even know how to use Windows anymore, to tell you the truth. And then they'll say, well, why is that? Because you spark curiosity, perhaps.
You know,
It's like teaching someone to fish versus giving them a fish, right? If they're willing to learn how to fish, then great. Yeah, Linux is good for you. But if you just want to sit down and not ever have to put any thought into what you're doing, then just stick with the mainstream. That's good. Anyway, the point I was going to make is that the reason that I think GUIs in general are so important for that end goal, if that's what the goal is to get more normies or whatever, then yeah, that makes sense. Certainly, Linux 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I mean, it was much more difficult to use, especially from a hardware perspective, and it relied a lot more on maybe not necessarily terminal. I mean, sure it did, but configuration files, Xorg and stuff like that, where you had to know these values and you had to put them in properly, and um, that was a very user unfriendly experience versus today. So maybe the prevalence and the rise of GUIs is due to that, response to that. But I think some of that was self-serving. We've kind of hit all the low-hanging fruit, I would say. Most people using Linux, I would still contend, are not just regular normal people. They are people who are using it because they want to and they have a reason to. And even those people, myself included, don't always want to do it the hard way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think computers in general, because I see there's some chatter in the YouTube stream about a lot of people just use their phones anymore. And that's been the case, I think, for several years now. I think last 5 or so, I think people have been shifting more and more to phones. It's probably pretty much where it's going to be at this point. I think if you're going to do some sort of if you could do some sort of, I don't like the term now because I think it's overused, but like if you're going to create something, some sort of content, whether it's programming or creating videos or artwork and so forth, you're going to need more than a phone to do that. And so,
But if you're going to consume it, you can use your phone.
right, consuming, phone, tablet, perfect. That's what you need. Yeah.
Right. So
That's the difference right there for
Yep.
me.
like 15 years ago, I worked in a store, and even back then, the vision was clear, and they were talking about how phones and tablets were a consumer's device for people who are going to consume content.
Right.
And it's basically a meme at this point that millennials use a computer to buy big purchases, where Gen Z and younger, they would never even think like, oh, I have to go get on the computer if I'm going to buy tickets to go somewhere because it's too expensive. And it's kind of
actually-
interesting to think about.
It's a good example because I wanted to plan a trip, so I had to rent a car and book hotels and stuff. And I started doing it on my phone, and kind of felt like it was difficult to do like that. I don't necessarily want to install a bunch of apps if I don't have to, and you know, I don't like the thing about phones that I don't like versus a web browser is that a web browser is sort of holistic, where I can go to multiple websites, I can be in the same UI, I can sort of switch tabs, it's cohesive. Whereas if I'm trying to do the same thing on a phone, a lot of times they're trying to get you to use their app, and then okay, I'm in this app for one thing, and now I got to switch to another app, and oh, this app timed out, and I got to log back. I mean, apps are fine for focused activities, but after a bit, to a certain point. And so, yeah, definitely. Like I started planning that, and I just was like, nope, I'm gonna go sit in front of the computer and do it. But increasingly, I do just anything related to banking or there are certain industries that I think have really pushed hard towards apps as being the primary way that you interact with their service, where you can do it through a browser, but it's just not as straightforward and not as like sort of efficient and clean. And I think banking, at least for the banks I use, like that's absolutely true. I would much rather use my phone to do it than actually go to their website, unless there's some extraordinary reason that's just different.
Yeah, my bank is the same way. The app is great. The website is okay if I need to pull up like a history, but
Yeah.
the app just works great.
Yep.
Yeah,
By design, right?
Yep.
Yeah, similarly for me, the app works really good. There's they tie me to my phone though, so if I want to log into the website, I have to use either the dual authentication from that's provided in the app itself, or they send me a text message, and I don't really like that. But
Yeah.
I tend to when I go through my expenses, I'll look at them on my phone and then work on the spreadsheet on the computer. That's how I've been doing it
Oh.
lately. So
So
just
that's
kinda
actually a
reconcile.
pretty
So-
having like a hybrid approach where it's easier to do, and I think that makes perfect sense. I do that with my calendar. When I'm inputting a long series, so my healthcare, like they'll schedule literally 3 or 4 months worth of appointments at one time, and I find that for my calendar app, it's just easier to do on my phone, but it's much easier to like look at because they have it as a monthly display in their website. It's much easier for me to look at the timeline and then just be putting it in my phone. So it's interesting that you do the same thing.
yeah,
I
well, I
wish-
think the
I recently
right tool for the right
discovered-
job. So what?
I was gonna say I recently discovered that I could do mobile check deposits through the browser on my phone instead of the app. So once I knew that, I deleted the app. I'm never using it again.
That's interesting. So they must have just found a better way to, like a plug-in or some way to do it through a browser. And honestly, mobile browsers have become pretty sophisticated pieces of software because the underlying devices themselves have become powerful enough to actually run. I mean, yes, it's still a mobile interface, but it's pretty much running the same, engine in the background now at this point. If you're using Firefox and Chrome, and I mean, I guess if you use an iPhone and Safari, I don't know. I just went home and it's amazing to me, like literally my entire family. I mean, 20 people and all of them use an iPhone. I'm the only person, and I'm like sitting there using my Android, and I'm just looking around going, everyone has Apple products. It's incredible.
Did they tell you you're the green bubble?
My one cousin did, and actually, the way that I know, and the thing that really annoys me is I'm waiting for RCS to be a bigger thing because my cousins, in particular, like he sent me for my birthday a video. And if you send a video from an iPhone to an Android through messages, it is garbage. It is like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how small it is. It's so ridiculously like 240. I might even not even be 240. That's that bad. So
It's
that's
like
Got
a,
really
good
the
news
only
for you,
thing.
Eric.
it's like
What's
a low
that?
definition GIF.
Basically.
RCS is coming to iPhone. I have
Oh,
the iOS 18 beta, and it works. I tested it with Vince, and so if it works from Australia, it should work from wherever you are.
Ooh,
was it upside down though?
it
Probably.
probably was. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Did, did just the messages upside down?
it was like, "Do you want to save this?" And I was like, "Nar."
My daughter, my daughter saw it there. She doesn't have TikTok, but she has shorts on YouTube, and there's a short. I mean, most of the short content I think just gets ripped from TikTok, but whatever.
They're posted all over the place. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a Australian person who does those videos, or nor, and it's yeah. So she does that all the time to me. Anyway,
That's hilarious.
I
it's
make
funny you
fun of
said
Vince
that. That's all.
for it, and he can't unhear it when other Australians do it.
Listen, they got
Just so
Bluey
everybody
out to the
knows.
entire world. We gave them Bluey. It's
Yeah.
enough. All right, they don't need anything else.
Yeah.
And just so everybody knows, green bubbles are still a thing. They're not going away. I don't know why they
It's
didn't
still
change
the
the
green
color.
bubble. Yeah.
It seems they should have changed the color at least because it's like a different user
Because
experience. at
it's
the end of the
yeah.
day.
Well, I noticed if I go into messages and I have no idea why this is true, my dad and I think maybe one other person are using, and I think it's because he has a Pixel. So we both have Pixel phones, so we both have the early version of like RCS.
Yeah, you have the private version of Google RCS.
Yeah, like his picture has the little chat bubble over top, the speech bubble over top of his avatar. So and like one other person. I'm not even sure it gives us much at this point, but and it's been that way for probably over a year. And I think it is if someone else has a Pixel, then it's picking up on that. So.
It tells you when they're typing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the things
Yeah.
that it allows you to see.
And I don't think it's only just pixels because I know I've got friends with other models of phones, or I can see when they're typing to me.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Google
I know
Messages.
the Google Messages app. Yeah.
Oh, that's probably what it is. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I use messages
actually-
because I like having it in the browser on my computer.
I'm actually probably gonna be switching back to my Pixel soon enough, just because I'm so tired of the spam calls. Oh my god.
I don't know how I'd ever go back between spam texts and spam calls, and I just never see them,
Yeah.
And then I go in and check, and it's like there's 100 spam thing. I'm like, wow, this is working very well.
The problem with RCS is that your carrier has to support it, and not all
Mhm.
carriers support it. I think the majority do, but not all of them.
Gotcha.
I like this screen call feature. I don't know if iPhone has this, but the screen call feature that the Google thing with screen. It's like what? As much as I've ragged on Google and I poo-pooed on Google and all the bad things I've said about Google, I still believe those. But I think that the screen call feature is fantastic, and whoever decided to make that a thing from Google, they have. It's such a life enhancement. It saves me time. It's actually now a fun thing when someone calls and I do that and it's an unknown number. Unless it's from a certain area code, then it's probably someone from work. But if it's not from that area code, then I'll screen it. And so my oldest son and I were like, we'll take bets on, not bets. We'll just say I think it'll be 10 seconds or 15 seconds, whatever. We'll make calls how long before they hang up. And now when I don't hate getting random calls because it's a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So iOS, the closest thing iOS has to that is the live voicemail thing. So if you send them to voicemail, you can see the transcript and all that kind of thing. But
Can you
it's
then
not the
pick up?
same as it's not the same as like a voice assistant saying, like, "Hey, thanks for calling, but can you tell me
Yeah.
why?"
Yeah, It's one of those things. It's like having ice and water on the door of your refrigerator. Like once you have it, you could never imagine not having it
Right,
again.
yeah.
Yep, for
And
sure.
so
Even though that
I
thing
think I'm
fails, it's
pretty
the first thing to
much.
fail. It's the first thing to fail
I
in a
know,
refrigerator.
but it's still a convenience feature that's worth it. But yeah, I don't know that I could get another Android phone and not have that feature. I mean, there's other stuff too. The Pixels do, like, the on device stuff. But yeah,
There's nothing on the Pixel that I care about that like I've used many phones. I got my old crappy Moto versus my Pixel. Outside of the better camera, I don't really care. But that screen call feature, which they both have, that to me is the killer feature. And basically that's if a phone doesn't have that, I'm not. I know you can send them to voicemail, but that's
You want to
not
know?
as. What's that?
There are two other features that go alongside that one that I absolutely love about a Pixel, and that is the hold for me feature. So
hmm
if you have to make a call, especially to a government agency, and you're going to be on hold for 6 hours, then you can do the hold for me, and it'll end the call for you, but the Google Assistant hangs on the phone for you, and then it basically rings you when the person's ready to talk. And
yeah.
that's awesome because I don't have to sit there babying my phone. It's like, I'll just get the call when they come back to the phone.
Oh my
And then
gosh!
the
I didn't
other
know that
is
was the thing.
the direct my call. So if it's a well-known directory tree, you can just, like, it'll have a list of what it is, so you don't have to sit there and wait for it to list off all the stuff. It'll actually give
Oh,
you
neat.
buttons to push for, like, oh, I need this department or this thing or whatever. And so
That's
you
cool.
can, and you don't have to, like, oh man, I missed the option. What was it? You can see it on the list and just
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
get the
yeah.
one you need.
it pops up. It's like most people hit 5, then 2, and it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool. I have
yep.
a somewhat related, since we're talking about phones, and this popped into my head because I've been doing a lot of like text entry. Does anyone else use the swipe keyboard or the swipe function of the keyboard where you,
I
you
All the
can
time.
trace?
That's all I
Yes.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I was like the only person left in the world that actually cared about it, but I mean, when I'm using that, I can really speed up, especially more complex words like, longer words, stuff like that, or ambiguous words where it's not clear what word I want until like the fifth character or something. And I love the Gboard because I can mix between them. It's like really
Mhm.
convenient. And I think that's probably another reason that I use a phone sometimes more than a computer, especially if it's not doesn't need to be like precise, is that for things like text entry and having that swipe aspect of a keyboard or double tap to enter um, punctuation, the voice recognition on a Pixel is so much better than just about
It's
any other
amazing.
device I've ever used.
Hmm.
And
So
it gets the
between all of that
punctuation
stuff,
right.
yeah, yeah, and without even saying it, yeah, absolutely. So I think between all those things, like we've gotten to a point, and I'm really curious to see. So I've been using Android Auto for the first time ever, and I've really been enjoying it, especially that trip I took. I drove 32 hours total, 16 hours one way, and having Android Auto and the map up and but being able to multitask and like it was really convenient. And but the Google Assistant voice app is just terrible. Do you want to reply whenever after it reads? And I'd say yes. I'm sorry, I didn't get what I'm like. How do you get yes wrong? Like, come on. And then and
Yeah.
then you're dictating a message and it just cuts you off. No, I wasn't done. I didn't even pause. What are you doing? So anyway, I'm hoping that maybe Gemini or some other advancement along that side of it, because that's sort of the last bit for me. If we can get a better assistant, I think that I'd be sold and just be done.
My issue with Gemini on the Pixel so far has been just it doesn't have enough of the Google Assistant functionality. And Vince actually mentioned this to me as well. He doesn't have Android Auto in his car, so he just has Bluetooth and stuff. And he mentioned that if he tries to, like, tell it to call someone, that Gemini's like, oh, you have to unlock your phone first
Come
because it
on.
it doesn't
Oh.
realize he's in a car, right? And so, but the Google Assistant will happily do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Google
So
Assistant will be like, hey, this person has 3 phone numbers. Which one do you want to call? And it's like, I don't know, the one I
all of
call every
them
other
at
time
once.
because I don't remember if I said it was home. or their cell phone or work. I don't know. Whichever one they're going to answer on.
That's when you just tell it pick for me.
Will that work?
I don't know.
I haven't used it in a
Make fun
while,
of it,
but like on road trips, I've attempted to use that, and it's like, okay, this is very frustrating because I don't know. I know when I look at it, it's the one that pops up on top or whatever.
yeah. If that were
Yeah.
Gemini, I'd just spin it around in circles all the time. Which
So
should
the
I
question is,
choose? I don't know. What do you think I should choose?
could you pit Gemini and Google Assistant against each other and have them argue? Is that a possibility? Because that might be entertaining.
It replaces it. So I looked at this
replaces
today,
it.
actually. Yeah, if you install Gemini, it actually wants to, well, it has to. It will replace
You can swap
Google
back
Assistant.
and forth, but yeah.
Yeah. And the problem is there's one feature of Android Assistant or Google Assistant is read this. So if you're on a web page on your phone and it's a long article, and rather than sitting there reading it, you're walking around or doing something, you can just say, "Hey Google," and everybody's phone just went off. You're welcome. Read this, and it'll actually contextually based on what's on your screen. It'll say okay, and then it switches over, and it
And somebody will
does
start
text
reading
to
it.
speech. That feature isn't in Gemini, so as long as that isn't in Gemini, I'm not going to switch because I actually use that pretty frequently.
I
Oh, yeah.
tried to switch to the Google Assistant, but I kept on getting Google, the new Google Assistant,
You mean Gemini?
and
Yeah.
yeah, and so how Adam, how did you? Is there a separate app? Because I tried to and they didn't let me.
Yeah, there's a separate Gemini app. Yeah.
A separate Gemini app because okay. Another feature was listen to this, and it'll tell you the music playing, song playing. That's another thing that got lost. So it's like a
Oh,
classic.
really?
Yeah, so it's
Oh,
a classic
man.
thing. It's like they're technically trying to push something that they claim is superior, but it's actually
so
lacking a lot
Google.
of things. You know.
Yeah, they did that with chat too, because like Hangouts had all of these cool features. You could do like it was a mature product that lots of people had used for years, so it had a lot of refinements and convenience features. And then they're like, no, Hangouts isn't a thing anymore. You have to use chat, and chat is the worst. It is so bare bones and barely functional, and I'm just like, how? How do you replace something? And I get that it's just simpler because there's less to it, but still, it's just a shame. And so they're kind of doing it with Gemini and Assistant as well, where it's like Assistant has been around long enough that it has these features, and I guess they're just saying, well, either not enough people use them, but I would think that read this is a huge accessibility feature.
Yeah, I would think so
Maybe
too.
not. I don't know.
I don't use that because I don't know, I don't. Maybe I should look at
Yeah.
it.
No, I mean it's almost like having, and this is not the right way to say it, but it's like a podcast because it's a script or an article basically, and if it's a long enough article, it'll take 15 minutes to read it or something, and that's basically like a short podcast. So
It's a
that's what I
really
like
good
about it.
feature. It was
Yeah.
a really good feature.
I didn't even know it existed.
Plus the voices have gotten sophisticated enough that they're actually, the tone is correct. I mean, it's not perfect. There's still some mispronunciations, but by and large, it just sounds like a person reading it. So, yeah.
The Edge browser
Yeah.
sounds really, really good if you try to use that feature.
Oh, I didn't know
On
it had it.
Windows.
Yeah.
Does
It's on Windows, yeah.
Oh,
Does
on
it talk
Windows.
about
Okay.
the advertisements in there too? Or does it skip over those?
Yeah, it just stops every 5 minutes.
Do you have edemia or whatever it's called, the swelling foot thing?
Well,
No.
I'm actually surprised to hear that all of you
Edema.
said that you do use it. They use the swipe keyboard. That means that we're not going to get rid of it anytime
No,
soon. Which is
I've
good.
never seen anybody else in real life use it. And I've seen people watch me do that, and they're like, "Whoa, what are you even doing?" And it's like,
What?
I don't know. It's a feature that came out in like 2010 or something.
So
I don't
think
know.
about this though, because I was using it the other day, and I'm like, how do I know how to use this? Because it's a QWERTY keyboard, right? And I'm going so fast that like I'm not even thinking about where the letters are. I mean, I'm looking at the screen, but I'm not looking to see where my finger goes next.
But
mean,
since
sometimes
you
I
know
feel like-
now,
But I feel like sometimes like, how is it even understanding me? Because this is such a mess of like where I'm going. But
dude, yeah. And sometimes I know my finger doesn't get anywhere near. I think it's the gesture of the shape of what you're doing, and then there's certain words where I already know I have to be extremely careful to make sure that my thumb ends on the I or something before going to the next letter.
Right. Well, at least then, so what normally happens is if you don't get it right with that, then the text uh, predication or whatever, the prediction will have it. And so you could just
Usually.
tap it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, by the way, Prophetic said, Nate, he told you about his medical condition in private, and you weren't supposed to say anything.
Oh well, I apologize. I'm a bad person.
Unbelievable. I forgive
Yeah.
you.
Well, I always get the ad that pops up. It's actually where I see that ad the most, and it really irritates me is on cubiclenate.com when I'm not going using my Pi hole. So I see it on my website, like going to me, and I'm just like, what is with this? Is this the best of the ads that my website can get? Is that what's happening here? Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. So before we get too further on this, what Seeker wanted to talk about, he's been doing some programming as of late, and before the show started, he was talking about how he containerized some of his build. I don't know if he's able to talk about that now, or he's muted and
I think
off.
you
And
waited until you walked away.
No, I'm all right. I was just snacking
Oh,
on
okay.
some noodles here.
he took a snooze. Is what he did. He's like, man, you guys
No,
are boring
snacking
the
on
snot out of me.
noodles.
Okay, well, whatever. So
Well, I got
you have
yeah.
to explain it for some of us that are not as smart.
No,
So
it's not
what
that.
software first of all?
Python with a GTK front end and Sublime I'm using as a text editor.
And what is it what is the overall software though? What is the
Oh,
thing
I'm
that
sorry. It's a screen recorder. It's kind of like an
Oh,
OBS version. It's an OBS crossover with a simple screen recorder.
Oh,
neat.
okay.
Okay.
My
That is
own
cool.
version of a screen recorder program. Um, so basically, like when instead of using StormOS, it's not to take away from StormOS because it was originally intended for that operating system, for that distro. I decided to make it a little easier for Ben and make it, I gave it logic and said, if you're basically launching the Python program that you can launch in any other Arch distro, it looks at the package manager and the distribution, and it picks up on the fact that it's Arch and it uses Pacman. Then it goes on and moves on to say, okay, it needs these files. So it uses the commands that we're aware of in Arch to install the files, to update the system if need be, only specifically for those files. And then it launches the program after a few moments.
That's really awesome.
And
No.
then I was messing around with a screenshot tool that I had, and I realized it was working in Arch, but it doesn't work well in Linux Mint because of the Qt system. So I'm converting that right now to GTK, which I did, and I'm rebuilding it into the hybrid program that I created for the screen recorder to not only have a screenshot tool, but also the recording software.
That's very cool.
Yeah. In a nutshell, that's as simplistic as I can make it.
So, is this available now for anybody to download and utilize? Are you building it for any architectures
Um,
or?
just about. It's almost ready. I'm still testing it on it. I have like maybe 10 different VirtualBox environments that I'm still testing it on. All of Arch will work. Some Debian will work, and I'm working on most of the Ubuntu's.
Okay. You said something about OpenSUSE in there as well.
I have OpenSUSE Gen 2, which Ben will help me eventually with, and Fedora. Fedora and OpenSUSE haven't worked, but I haven't tested them well
Yeah,
enough. I don't know them well enough,
like
but
Red
Gen 2 I
said,
do
we're
test.
still testing the Gen 2 side of things.
Yeah.
Well, I know someone who uses OpenSUSE pretty regularly that can probably help you test that one.
Okay. But yeah, perfect. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
That's
So-
really cool. So hopefully that'll, hopefully it'll grow into something more and be kind of a neat, another neat tool to use for getting a job done. Because there's sometimes when like I feel like OBS is just too heavy
Yeah.
and screen recorder is just doesn't quite cut it. So that might be a good middle of the road to use. Does it work well with Wayland too?
No, it's only with because it uses FFmpeg and the X11 tools, so it's only right now Zorg. Zork server.
Okay.
There was a Python script.
Yeah.
I saw somebody with it, but they're using some of the Wayland tools, but that was a while back. I was just focusing on XLM because it uses all those tools that FFmpeg actually has
Hmm.
to make this possible. You know,
Well, I have this. There's this thing in Plasma that the Wayland to X11 video bridge. I wonder how that would work with it.
I don't know. I'm actually I have to try to. I tried getting the VirtualBox um, guest editions to work and KDE on Neon just to test it out in there. That wasn't working well, and I didn't want to use boxes because boxes you'd have to install Spice editions to make it work in there.
Okay.
But
Well, yeah, I wouldn't mind trying that out. I think it'd be kind of fun, just because you're
Yeah.
someone in the community
Yeah.
and it's fun to test new software out. It might be a good time. I don't know.
on the
Oh,
Storm
yeah,
West edition, go ahead, Ben.
Sorry, Red, but yeah, Nate. Another neat program we recently put in Storm OS is a reflector-based program where it'll sort the mirrors, and I'll let Red touch on that right quick.
Yeah, I mean, I simplified. I basically took Reflector. I added a GTK GUI in front of it, on top of it, and I made it so that once it gets the information over, it does what kind of like Simple Reflector does, but a little bit smaller, and it'll ask you if you want to save it, you save it, and also if you want to back up from what you had previously, it reloads the backup as well.
I'm sorry. What does Reflector do then?
Oh,
I
it's
don't.
for Arch Linux, Arch distributions. It actually backs up the mirrors and
Oh, okay.
re-rates it. Makes it
Okay.
you want to use the new mirror sets in case you're updating or downloading something and it feels like it's really slowly. It's probably because the mirrors are being outdated, so they
Oh,
just
okay.
need to be updated. That's all.
That's very cool. Yeah, I probably don't need that in OpenSUSE, but that's cool for your running Arch.
Oh, you're
That's a neat way
good.
to.
But
Yeah.
another thing we've been doing is we've been working on a Linux from Scratch plus Gentoo's portage and Arch's whatchamacallit, Arch's Pac-Man scripts actually. So we've been combining Linux from scratch with those package managers in a script form, and it runs in dialogue and in curses actually. So we're simplifying the process in script form of installing LFS with a bunch of package managers essentially.
Hmm.
So, it's I don't recommend doing this unless you've extensively read and tried LFS, to the nth degree. So, if unless you're like me and have built LFS a good number of times, don't try these scripts because you won't know what the heck they're doing. So, yeah, just don't use this as a cheat sheet, folks.
Gotcha.
That's the disclaimer to these scripts. So, yeah, that's our 2 cents on this whole party
Sweet.
here.
No, it's neat when people are really creating new things. I think it's super cool, and I think it's
Thanks.
just absolutely fantastic. So hope you keep at that.
One
Yeah.
other thing, Nate. I am turning 33 in 3 days.
Are you? Well, see, I told
Yes,
everyone what your
yes.
birthday is. That's one of your PII things you don't want to share with people, isn't it anymore? Isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, another tech thing I want to bring up. Check this. I am running Mac OS, sorry for the glare, with accelerated graphics on a AMD laptop.
Oh, is that like a Hackintosh?
Yes, I just wanted to show that off.
No, very good.
Yes,
I, li-
I told you I'd have it working, and I just got it working.
Fantastic. So you like hurting yourself? Congratulations.
I'm a gluten for punishment. What can I say?
A gluten for punishment? You eat bread
Yeah,
when
a
you're
glutton
to
for
punish yourself?
punishment, however
Yeah.
you say it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I just, I figured, might as well give it a shot, and then boom, done.
Fantastic. Yeah, maybe I should do that to run. One of these days I gotta play
Well,
with
one of
mine.
these days, it's worth something doing at least once in your life.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm gonna be even more of a hell for punishment and force myself to update it to the latest Sequoia. Just because I'm insane.
Okay.
But we all have
All
our things
right.
we like to do. You know, just don't cut yourself, right?
Yes, it's, I like to hurt myself by installing crazy things.
For sure. So speaking of AMD, since you did bring that up, so it looks like AMD has a crucial Linux optimization that's coming to lower power use during video playback. So I know that one of the I think the issue I thought AMD was pretty good at this to begin with, but you know, I guess you can get better at it. So there have been some ongoing reports from a variety of users and systems around high power use during the GPU accelerated video playback with current generation AMD Ryzen Phoenix laptops. Fortunately, an optimization is coming to benefit Phoenix and forthcoming, I think it's Sticks? I don't know. Strix Point laptops with noticeably lower power consumption during video playback. So they found the engineers found the root cause of the issue and they provided a fix that enables dynamic power gating during VC and video. I don't know what that means for these latest AMD Ryzen laptops, system on chip laptops. So I think that's pretty cool. It's nice to see when this is, I think, targeted toward Linux. So the power gating is going to be a Linux 6.9 and 6.10 kernels to facilitate the easier testing. But anyway, so yeah, it's pretty good. I think one of the things that seems to be still part of the problem, I think, with Linux is power usage versus Windows machines. Although honestly, I can't say that I noticed a difference. So maybe it's just me. And then you have the Macs, which seemingly don't consume any electricity at all when they operate because they're cheating. But so what do you expect out of a laptop when you're using it? What do you consider good in battery life?
I guess I'll start this one off since I have two laptops or three sitting here. Well, I would say, low power consumption as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and, not short as heck battery life. And, just, fast boot times, fast load times of applications, very minor things like that.
That's not all that minor, I think.
And not a lot of RAM usage for that matter.
I want a Ferrari that barely uses any fuel whatsoever, right?
Yeah. And Anna Rita says 33, what a baby.
So Leo in the chat, he says 6 hours minimum. 6 hours doing what?
6 hours minimum, yeah.
Yeah,
That
so
sounds about right.
I don't know if I've only ever had the worst laptops in existence that are 10 years old and the battery's always dead already. But I've never gotten more than like 3 hours out of a battery.
Okay.
3 hours, really, dude.
Wow.
I've never had
depends on what you're doing. Go ahead.
I've never had a new laptop for that matter. I've always had like someone's hand me down. But if I got 3 hours, I'd be like, dude, wow, that lasted way longer than long enough to unplug it and move across the house.
I've complained about this. So Linux in general just doesn't. I mean, you can tune it, but it just doesn't do a great job, especially compared to Windows. If I again take this Latitude tablet for example, like on Windows, it can probably do close to 4 hours, like three and a half. And maybe like depending if I'm not really doing it, but on Linux, like even if I'm not really doing much of anything, I'm lucky if I get 2 hours. Like it just if it's the scheduler, like I'm not sure exactly what it is, but yeah. But in terms of like how much time I need, like I think when I traveled more, that needing to find like airports 15 years ago were very stingy with having outlets. You were like lucky if you could find a free outlet somewhere to plug in. So in those cases, absolutely, having extra battery life, but then you have to sort of traditionally, you'd have to weigh the trade-offs of long battery life with lower performance, like a netbook or something like that. So if all you were doing was like light productivity work, like, yeah, that's great. But things now, and I know that M processors are fairly new or Snapdragons, we're having to trade off less and less in terms of the, power consumption and just the power of, the functionality as well. So I don't think it's going to be as big an issue necessarily moving forward, like as we continue, like the TDPs, the wattage and stuff on even like normal processors are so much lower than they used to be that and battery technology is getting better and better as well.
Mhm.
So I think those things converging are making it so that even like not not the greatest hardware in the world, but to Brian's point, like if you're not getting newer equipment, then you're not really seeing that benefit. So, or at least you won't for a while. And but yeah, I mean, I think it just depends. Like I think people that I had the gaming laptops a lot of times, and like I don't think anyone who has a gaming laptop has any expectation of like good battery life. I mean, at that point, it's like, do I have enough to unplug it so I can like walk to somewhere else and plug it back in?
Mhm.
Like
Right.
that's as much battery life as I need. Um, so it really depends on the use case, but I think a general purpose laptop, 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours is probably a reasonable amount. But then, like I said, the newer sort of ARM chips are. And I'm curious to see maybe Risk V as well. We'll have some of those benefits too, but um, I mean, it's impressive to see that Snapdragon's been able to sort of catch up to Apple in that regard. I
Yeah.
don't know if their emulation is as good, because apparently that's part of why M chips are so good as well, is because they emulate so well.
Hmm.
But
So
yeah,
low tech Linux, I think he said he has like 7 hours. He had my laptop with Tumbleweed has been idling for 7 hours and lost little battery. And he's running a IdeaPad Flex 5 2-in-1 laptop with AMD graphics. And so that's pretty impressive
that's
there.
yeah, that's incredible.
So I'm not very good about closing things on my laptop. So I probably get,
Uh,
yeah, so that's a me problem. I'm not going to blame my computer for that. But I regularly get around 5 6 hours, unless if I'm running virtual machines. Then that's cut down pretty rapidly. But if I'm not doing
that's
virtual machines, I'll get 5 6 7 and a half. I think 7.5 hours. I think is the best I got. So
yeah, virtual machines definitely are they take a lot of battery power. That's something I never even really considered on a framework. Of course, you can change everything else. Can you also opt for different size batteries?
there's two sizes of batteries. I got the 61 watt hour instead of the 50 something, 55 I think.
Okay.
So hopefully they make
For
some bigger
that
batteries
model,
too.
or just in general, they just have like those two models of battery?
They just have those two models. I think they're phasing out the smaller one. So for like the i5s, they'll put the smaller one I think still, but the larger 61 watt hour battery.
Under the configuration of this XPS I have, you could either have a full width battery for the entire, like it's underneath the touchpad, or like I did, you can opt for a shorter one, like a 60 or 56 or something around there, and then have enough room for a 2.5-inch SATA drive. So that's what I did, is I have a small SATA drive in the space that that extra battery would have been. And I did that, knowing that I'd get worse battery life, but that I didn't have an expectation that it would be better than it is. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually had to replace the battery in here once already because it slowly started to swell,
Oh
and
yeah,
to a
yeah.
point where eventually like my touchpad was starting to pop out,
Right. I've seen
like
that
the
before.
edge of it. And I'm like, what's going on? Did I drop it? Like, I don't remember, like, and then it just occurred to me, oh yeah, well the battery's swelling inside. So
I think the promise of solid state batteries sounds intriguing. We'll see what happens from that. I don't know if you've seen any of that.
I've seen not solid state, but I've seen that they're looking at sodium
Mm-hmm.
instead of
Yeah,
lithium.
sodium also. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those.
and
That's
that's
one of those Tesla
supposedly,
things.
yeah, well, it's just less rare earth materials where you don't have to go negotiate with some junta regime in some small third world country to like mine lithium or something. Yeah, I got into like electric car production and like how there are so many different options that we never see here. And there's a video kind of interesting. A guy goes to South America to several different countries, and like they have all of the Chinese brands of electric cars, and you can get like the equivalent to like a normal, sedan family car for like $10,000. And it's not a piece of crap. Like it's actually like a decent car. But because the Chinese companies they control the battery manufacturing because they went and bought the mines that produce the materials. So
Right.
they control the entire production of the battery, all the way from the minerals or the materials through production. That's why it's so cheap. So,
We won't
I
get
would
past here
probably,
in the state. Don't want to disrupt the status quo.
no,
I
got to
would,
keep Elon Musk in business.
I would be
Yep.
concerned about the labor force that's working in those mines, how they're being treated. That'd be my
Blood
biggest
diamonds.
concern.
It's the new blood diamond, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's a
yeah.
new blood diamond. Yep.
Yeah, I don't like that.
it is what it is. I mean,
I don't like
Everything
would
you
like to
buy
think-
is from it.
Hmm?
Everything you buy comes from there. Like
Yeah.
it's impossible. Like the supply chains are so impossible to actually track down abuses.
Yep.
That you just have to assume that there's just abuses everywhere.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
do know
well,
that
that's
HP makes extra effort to ensure their supply chains are as clean as possible, and I think Dell does
they
as
say.
well. Well, it's something that they it's part of their company culture. So, I mean, yeah, they could be lying out through their teeth. It's possible, I'm sure, but I mean, it might be. But I think the fact that they make a statement, they actually push for that says something.
I forget the example, but
We
I
won't
am
get into
starting
that
to see.
debate, but yeah.
I'm starting to see more proactive um, social conscience or ecological conscience, I guess you could say. Because I mean, ultimately, if government isn't going to tell businesses what they can and can't do in terms of pollution or I don't know mining, whatever it is that they're doing, it's up to the either we don't buy their products, which like Adam said, it's hard to actually know what the supply chain issues are, or it's up to the companies themselves to have some sort of a conscience to do it. And
Yeah, which they won't.
obviously they won't unless it's profitable. And I always think of like you have to imagine or I have to wonder if someday like the trash that we throw away today becomes valuable enough that they go back and
mine it
mine
later.
it out of
That's
landfills.
that's the one positive of landfills is we have all these resources dumped in one area, so if we can find a way to mine them later, that might have some
Yeah.
value.
Are you talking about Wally?
No, but that's a good idea.
No, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I hadn't even thought of Wally, but no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's more like, I want to be very careful how I tread here, but if culturally we think being responsible is the best thing to do, I wouldn't count on governments. I mean, unless if government does what the people want it to do, I don't see them as being any more of a beneficiary, like helping the problem out at all either. They pretty much just
So
tax.
then we're just boned, huh?
Yeah, I think we are. Honestly.
Yeah. It's been a good run.
Yeah, it's nice knowing you guys. So, but you can at least make a difference in your part of the world and do the best you can for those around you
It's
and your community. It's all you can do, really.
It's my considered opinion that keeping things as long as you can, the thing you have is always more efficient than the thing that you could get, right? I mean, you could get a newer car, you could get a newer laptop, you could get newer, windows for your house, whatever. And yes, you can see a return on those things, but it's usually not something that's immediate. And then problematically, what happens to the old thing? So unless you're able to, make sure that goes to someone who's going to use it or can be repurposed. So, recycling's good. Being careful about what you buy is good and all that, but just not being willing to use something until it's really used up, right? Not needing, I'm actually happy that smartphones have stopped innovating, or there just seems to be far fewer like reasons to buy a new one now.
Mhm.
And it seems more common for people to just keep a phone for 3, 4, 5 years now. And whereas before, I think there was real pressure, and not just marketing pressure, but like legitimate, feature pressure, where there was like something new that you felt like you were either missing out on, or legitimately like had an appreciable impact on your quality of life, or the usefulness of a product. That seems to be less and less the case for smartphones, unless you think like a modest increase in the camera, or I mean, we've talked about some things, but a lot of those things we talked about with Pixels in particular have been there for several models now. So um, and that was probably one area where I felt a lot of pressure to keep buying new. It was like, oh, I
I,
need a new phone. And even then, go ahead, Adam.
no, I'm saying I'm sorry, but like
Oh,
Eris just made me laugh really hard. It says phone
no, it's fine.
pressure. You don't want to be the green bubble.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're young, I could see that being a legitimate thing. Like to me, I'm old. I could care less, couldn't care less what someone thinks about like, oh, you're green or blue.
I'm
But
just
I could see that like my daughter having that kind of a pressure. So
yeah.
No, I
What
can
I
color
was,
green. I don't know. Is it the Androids that get green or do they get blue? I
yeah.
don't
If you're
even
not
know.
green, I think.
if you're not using an
So
iPhone,
yeah.
you get a
It's
green
actually
bubble.
it's actually the iOS phone that sees the green bubble. Like they
Yeah.
themselves, their messages are green.
Yeah.
But that implies bad, like Eric said, you can't send videos, bad photo
Oh,
quality,
sucks for
a
them,
lot
I
of features
guess.
are
I don't
gone.
know.
So
Yeah.
Well, you're like a poor kid, right? I mean, you can't get the new
Yeah.
toy, or
and
the
then
new
if
you
Yeah.
don't have the new sneakers because you can't afford them or
And
whatever.
as long
and
as
then
you
if
have
you
that
have a
green bubble, you will never wipe the smell of poverty off of you.
Oh, it's sucks that people think I'm poor, I guess, man. I don't
and
know.
what ends up happening if you have a group chat with like your friends and there's one person who has that green bubble, nobody can get the other features because of that one green
Yep.
person.
That one
So
Oh,
person screws it up.
people go as far as saying I'm not gonna get talk with that person because they just bring the whole group down.
Hey, gotcha.
Yeah.
gee, thanks, Apple.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
not
RCS
in any
doesn't
group
doesn't really
chats.
fix that problem either. Just so you know.
I'm sorry. Say again.
RCS doesn't really fix that problem either.
Uh,
Well,
The
for
issue is like that iMessage is not a separate app, that it integrates SMS in the same app. If they had different apps for the different, if iMessage was just like WhatsApp or Telegram or something, it wouldn't be anywhere near the issue that it is. But it's the fact that SMS was the original messaging for the iPhone. They later came out with iMessage and they stuck it in the same app. If they were two different apps, we wouldn't have this conversation.
yeah, I think for me it's
Because
just I
nobody
don't care.
complains that like, oh, I'm in a Telegram app and this guy's SMSing me over here. Like, well, they're two different apps.
Yeah, I guess for me it's I just don't care. I would tell them not to talk to me anyway because if that's how you measure, if you measure our friend's status on the color of the text bubble, then we are not going to be friends.
I could see the
Yeah, so-
capabilities being a thing though, because like I watch my daughter and her friends in their group chats and stuff, and I could totally get that if there was some feature they wanted to use, like a filter or some dumb thing that they think
Stickers
is
and
important.
stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah. Then also Apple's got a pretty terrible track record on their supply chain, so I don't really care anyway what they think. So I won't buy Apple.
Judge them by their character, not by the color of their bubble.
I like where we go with that.
Social justice for Green Bubble.
That's right. And I have a green room, so I like green. It's my color. I wear green all the time. Well,
Like how just at any given time we can chroma key Nate.
you should.
The floating head
Think of
everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
Think of the possibilities.
Well, it's 21:48 by my clock, so it means we got to figure out what's going on next week. So
Spaghetti.
that would be an
have
application
spaghetti next
appetizer. What's up?
We're gonna have spaghetti next week.
Spaghetti. I used to do SpaghettiOs. I've never fed my kids SpaghettiOs, and I think about it, and I think I've cheated them out of a good Gen Xer childhood.
This man's eating SpaghettiOs, and he's a green bubble. They're not related, huh?
What?
Poverty food and the poverty bubble, not related, huh?
Yeah, we eat a hungry
dude.
we eat a hungry Howie's.
Man, you're digging deep.
Actually, I
didn't
prefer to
know
call
I was poor like in 2 ways.
Adam goes for the jugular.
Yeah.
I get the,
I'm just
and the-
thinking back at times I've been at music festivals and wake up at like, it's like 7 in the morning. I'm the only one up, and I'm like, man, I'm just gonna eat these SpaghettiOs right out of the can.
I would
Yeah,
like
cold.
to point out,
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that earlier I did mention about switching to my Pixel, so just the thing. I stand in solidarity with the Pavos.
yeah,
Yeah. Pixel right here. Oh, you can't see it, but
that's funny. I got a Pixel. Yeah, Poverty Pete's. It's my favorite place to eat pizza. Poverty Pete's. So anyway, next week's gonna be an application appetizer. Speaking of SpaghettiOs, and since we could bring up like an application maybe to try out, or maybe a series of applications. I don't know if anyone had anything that they can think of. We could try Seeker if he's ready for that, for people to beta test it. We could make that a thing.
Yeah, we can do the. It won't be the. I'll still work on it, but it's going to be primarily for Arch or Manhattan.
It's I think that's actually a nice idea. It might get us some coverage and whatnot. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do that, and then just in case someone can't make it work, maybe we'll talk about screen recorders in general. That might be a nice.
Yeah, and it might give us some beta feedback.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah, I would
bugs,
love that, yeah.
whatever.
And also, it could be if someone says, "Well, I couldn't get to work or didn't have this feature or whatever."
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Well, like in Storm, how do we stream Storm OS on here? Can we just?
You could do it from. You can do share your screen. I can just turn that I can turn that feature on. Yeah.
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 What
So.
about LS?
What's that?
We're talking about LS.
Linux Saloon.
No, like listing a directory's contents.
Oh, the LS directory.
Yeah.
The command.
You mean dir, right?
Directory.
dir
Get
/w.
child item.
Oh. All right. Well, that was the quickest choosing of an application. So thank you, Seeker, for being here for that.
No problem. My pleasure.
And if you have
we're
any,
always glad to come hang out with you, Nate.
oh, you're such a sweet man. Thank you very much for saying that. 'Cause
I try my best, dude.
like I said, I don't know that I like hanging out with me that much. So
Oh, come on.
if you have any suggestions for like discussions or distributions that we should try out, like maybe I see a Linux Mint in the future, or application appetizer suggestions we should try out, please send them to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can tag Eris or somebody and so forth in there. And if you have any poll ideas, Eris will gladly take any poll ideas as well. So he always has some great ideas, and they seem to be lots of fun. I don't know, they're pretty great. So yeah. Anyway, so there we are, and I did get some feedback, being told I need to do a better job of putting in timestamps. Yes, you're right, I should. So thank you for that suggestion. I called myself out. I'll try to do better. Okay, so I guess it is time for last call. Did anybody have anything else they want to talk about, like bring up before we kind of close this thing out? Anything exciting? Jinda, been kind of quiet here. Anything exciting in your world? Any Raspberry Pi shenanigans?
No, not really. Sorry to be quiet today. That's how it worked out.
It's all right. It happens.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens. So, Eric, you doing? How's the distro hopping digesting?
Not bad. Yeah, I had a little bit of difficulty for some reason, like you had mentioned OBS, and Flatpak, I kind of had the same thing with Audacity,
Hmm.
where it just, for whatever reason, like it just kept freezing on me and crashing, and was a real problem because that's what I had been using to edit the podcast, and so just kind of it's a non-starter. You like open it up and start working. And you're like, okay, what do I do now? So when you and I were doing the Atlantic Extend, uh, I had started using Reaper, and so I have that license still. So I went back and started playing with it again, got it set up again,
Hmm.
and it really is. It's a full DAW work digital audio workstation, and like there's no comparison between it and Audacity. Even though Audacity is adding some real time features and things, it's still just the way you do the editing is destructive, and it's anyway, it's apples to oranges. And so back in Reaperland, but I had to like take a lot of time to sort of remember how to do things and learn how to do things, and so I'm still making my way through that. Ultimately, it's going to be a better option, but there's just a steeper learning curve, which that's kind of the way software works. Is you want to have a good product and a good outcome, you have to put in the effort to kind of learn how to use it properly. Like, I don't think I'll ever get into Blender, but I can see how that's another good example of like people do incredible things, but if you just open Blender and look at it, you're like, what do I do? And Reaper's a lot like that. You kind of it's so configurable and so like malleable to the situation. But anyway, so yeah, been updating my processes, and but I think it's going to lead to a better place and just make it easier for me to do, because the other thing is that using Audacity, it took forever.
Yeah.
So but yeah, there's going to be a new episode just came out, like literally I think 2 days ago or yesterday, and then we're going to record another one soon, and yeah, keep on moving. So
Fantastic. Well, that's excellent. Yeah, I've been having trouble with Audacity as well, and so I've been using the Tenacity Flatpak, and that seems to have
Mhm.
cleared up my issues. So I haven't tried
I really
Audacity in
like
a
that for
while.
recording. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tenacity is good for recording, and I really like their theme because it fits in so well with all the other dark stuff.
Hmm.
Well,
The
I
dark
can
theme in
start building the
Audacity is,
recorder now.
yeah. Hey, honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
you know what? That's funny because there that one more pixel thing, just because we talked about it so much, is
Mhm.
the recorder and the ability to do a transcript and to have
Yeah.
it recognize multiple people and have like person one, person
Yeah,
two, person
it's
three, like it's really fabulous. So um, makes life so much easier if that's what you're trying to produce. Like I could run my stuff through it, and it'll output it. So uh, anyway,
That's pretty cool.
enough
Mhm.
enough pixel.
Man, I thought 7,000 lines of code. That's how far mine is already. Almost 7,000 lines of code, which is
It
not a
builds up
lot by
fast, doesn't it?
comparison. Hmm?
It's not but it happens quickly. Like you, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you,
it's almost a month, and I was done, guys. I was done, and I said, let me see if I can add this to less than 200 line code, but it was built in Qt. And then when everything was working great, I'm in Harrow and Arch, and I said, let me test it in Mint, and it had problems with Qt.
uh,
I said, okay, let me convert this, which I converted the screenshot tool to GTK. Then it comes up with this other error, and I'm like,
have you considered? And
yeah.
I think this is the strength of something like Flatpak and even Snap
Mm,
is that you can bundle the requirements so that you're not
I've
dependent
never done
on,
Flatpak, I've always just,
yeah,
I figured Python, the way Python does it in such ways, and give it the command and the logic
yeah,
and look for these signs. I mean, I came up with a way of saying relating Arch with Pac-Man,
yeah,
and it picks up the fact that, oh, it's using Pac-Man, it's using Arch.
yeah.
Pretty clever.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks.
so that's one thing. The other thing I think you end up running into eventually
Mhm.
is a lot of the immutable distros are using
Yeah.
DistroBox, and so
Mhm.
they're using virtualized environments. And if you check for Pac-Man, it may have Pac-Man just because it has that environment. And so I
Yeah,
just
yeah, I was looking at
so
that too.
so Flatpak. I mean, if you're already spending a considerable amount of time trying to adapt it to other systems, like it might just be worth looking to say like, oh, well, if I can publish this as a Flatpak, then no matter who's using it on what system, there's a reasonable expectation that it's just going to work. So
I have never learned Flatpak. I'll be honest with you.
Just a thought.
I know. I'm just so used to doing things on Python that it just, for me, it's fun, just
Yeah, I
doing
got you.
it this way. But thanks for the idea, though.
Cool. That's why I like this place.
Just a thought.
Sharing of ideas, helping each other along. So I see Steve's very own. He didn't join us on the Zoom because, I don't know, maybe he's been snubbing us lately. But he does have a stream, I think, every Sunday morning. I know I didn't see him last Sunday morning. Maybe he was skipping out. But he does do Sunday morning stream. I think he's still doing it. And if I keep like filibustering here, maybe it'll catch up and he'll say so. But it's at 9 Eastern, 8 a.m. Central. So you can check out Steve's very own on the YouTubes. Steve's very own. So it's like watching the one of the nicest men you could possibly see on the interwebs chat at you. So that's why I like it.
I agree. He's a good man. He's a great person.
Yeah, he looks like he could always use a hug. You know that? Like you just want to give him just a virtual hug, not a real one. So Linux user space.
In retail for 40 years, you'd need a hug too.
Yeah, probably. So Linux user space, they are on break right now, but they did a quick episode 21, which was recorded the other night on the live stream, so you can check that out. I don't know if this is the one that I did join them this past. I think it was Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? I don't know.
Yeah,
I joined them, and it was fun. I like Leo and Dan are just fun people to talk to. I think they bring a smile to everybody's face, I'm sure. Leo's kind of a fast talker though, they're trying to shoot something past you.
They are certainly above reproach.
Yes. They are above reproach. There's only one organization that's ever used such vocabulary. They're above something.
I reproach them. No, I'm just teasing.
So just recorded an episode of Linux Out Loud with Matt and Wendy. It was a good time. We talked about some of the stuff going on. It's kind of been the theme as of late. Although we did talk about the fact that the one episode that seems to keep like climbing is the are you a jerk? We didn't use the more harsh language, but are you a jerk? In different text situations, so I think we might have to revisit that. It was fun. I have a website called cubicle8.com. I do things, and I'm about to publish an article about my floppy imaging experience on Linux. So it's something I haven't done in a while, and I had to search it out, so I may as well take those notes and publish them, because who doesn't love a floppy disk, huh? Yeah. It's the save icon. It's a 3D printed save icon. So, anyway. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network, so check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, being a part of the conversation here, and both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, and for all of you that watch the show after the fact, thank you. You're pretty rad. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back into personal computers. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Bye.
Good night.